Well, good evening, church family. I want to thank you for joining us for our February prayer emphasis for our missionaries. We've been calling it News from the Field. Well, tonight we'll be hearing from Gary and Abby Hale, our missionaries to the Dominican Republic. This country's response to the pandemic has caused this couple and their ministry team to have to think in many new ways to minister the word for the national believers, as well as discover new ways through which to share the gospel. We hope this will not only be an encouragement to you, but equip you to pray most effectively for our missionaries. So let's join the interview now.
Well, Tri-County family, thank you for being with us tonight. We are going to take some time to visit with the Hales this evening. As I kind of look into my sanctified crystal ball, it was hard for me to imagine that a year ago, when we were first approaching COVID and the initial lockdowns in response to that somehow coming into 2021, we would still be battling this, not only battling new lockdowns, new restrictions, but even new variants of COVID that are starting to spread themselves around the world. And so it has just truly brought us, not only as ministries here stateside, but with our missionaries internationally, to entirely new ways in which to approach doing ministry. And we're going to see tonight that it's the same with the Hales, but we're looking forward to them to not only talk about what's happened in the past, what has happened currently, but also the vision for the future and how we can, in a very real way, stay plugged into, again, this sweet couple in the ministry there in the DR. So again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm just going to go ahead and hand things over to you all.
Thank you, Pastor Brian, and thank you, Tri-County Baptist Church, for having us and using this forum in order for us to connect. These are strange times. These are difficult waters, and we're navigating them much like you all are, and just trusting the Lord to give us the wisdom and the ideas and the strength and everything that goes into navigating this difficult season. For us, I'll give you a little context of how COVID has affected us and the ministry, and then we can open up different aspects of the ministry. But overall, in about March, the country became very concerned about the spread of the virus here, and so they started shutting things down. The hotels were shut down, the border was shut, including air, tourism coming in and air flights in and out. And so that lasted till about June. That also included public places of worship. And so we suddenly, in March, were thrown into needing to have an online ministry in order to connect with our people, or die on that hill that though the government is telling us that all these things are happening and everything is shutting down except for key grocery stores and things like that no, we're going to defy that. And so it was a weird place to be, and you're trying to show love and concern, and you got to understand that in our context we have a lot of small homes, we have a lot of people that live with elderly people, and so the loving thing for us was to say we want to try to do our best to minister to you and still protect your health too. And so we were kind of all those decisions that you all have to make, when to open, when not to, when to take a stand, when not to. It's all the things that we've been walking through this year. So we closed, but we continue to do ministry, through our online and through personal visits as we could. And then in June, it opened up again, but with heavy restrictions. And we're still under those restrictions now. For instance, when you come to our church now, you have to go in one entrance way, and you get hand gel, you get your temperature checked, you come through and are escorted to seats that are distanced. We've had to add another service, which is an obstacle, but it's also an opportunity. Because yes, the seats are distanced, but what it's allowing to do is the first service is now, sometimes it's already filled, and the second service is filling up, and we've got a slot now for our third service if we have to go to that. What I see out of this is that we could come out of this and actually be stronger. As far as more people interacting. So, there's obstacles, there's challenges. You go from one service, you go to two. You've got to get people in and out. So it kind of feels a little bit like herding cattle. And I mean,
feels like going through IKEA. You're just in a maze, all the way through with the arrows.
Yeah. And so, and you got to end the first service in time to let them dismiss so they're not intermingling with the others. So there's a lot of dynamics there that we don't like.
And Gary doesn't like to be limited to his sermon length.
Yeah, I mean, that's if I'm
We're
sure
all
Pastor
like-
Brian can appreciate that. And so, people are like, it's time, they're standing up, got the next group coming in. But through that, the people have been faithful. We're probably about up to 60 to 70% of our attendance pre-pandemic, which I think is pretty good. But, obviously there's still people that don't feel comfortable coming back. You still have to wear a mask everywhere you go in public.
But they still join online.
But they join online. And so, the start of the online ministry, the second service has been things that have kind of grown out of this. And so as we go forward, those are things that will continue. I mean, we don't believe that the online is a replacement for in-person worship and the gathering of God's people, but certainly for those that cannot, come, it has been an outreach and a blessing. And we've had people from other cities and even countries that have contacted us, because they tuned into our feed. And so, just generally, that's how it's been. Now, that's opened up opportunities, especially in the spring and early summer. When they closed everything down, a lot of people lost their jobs. And so that affected the finances. If there's one thing that's really been affected negatively so far that I could say, it would be the giving. And I think there's two reasons for that. One, people have lost jobs. Secondly, people are concerned that this could get worse before it gets better. And so they may be storing away in order, because there's not a whole lot of government stimulus and fallback if things would get worse. And so you're trying to encourage people to be faithful, obviously take care of their family, but also still continue to make giving through their local church a priority in their life. So there's lots of delicate balances there. But God, we've been able to pay the bills. We've been able to, pay our staff that we have in our church. And so, God has met the needs. The giving is way down. The attendance, I think, is doing really well. We've gotten some ministries off that. But those people that lost jobs, we were able to, throughout the spring and summer, give them some food relief. And so we would deliver large bags of food that have, rice and beans, probably 2 or 3 days worth of meals. And it wouldn't, sustain a family, for a whole month, but it would just give them a bump and an encouragement. We probably did about 300 of those between the church and the women's rescue ministry that kind of working hand in hand in that. So we were able to do about 300, not meals, but 300 large packages. And so that was a blessing. And some of our people donated toward that. And then we had some other people that gave gifts toward that ministry. So, again, that was kind of birthed out of the need of helping people. So,
Gary, we talked about possibly follow-up questions, and I'm kind of loath to do that. I said before we got started, I would try not to, but you shared something that I think is not an uncommon dynamic that I'm hearing not only from our missionaries, but also an aspect of concern even stateside. We just had our annual business meeting and we shared how our tithing was down for this year. I think for many of the same things. We had some people that were displaced from their job, some who had hours reduced. There was an aspect of fear involved in there. There's a number of specifics, as well as here in the United States, we have a new tax law which makes tithing not as advantageous to you. And so it's really going to test, I think, many believers about why they tithe. Was it for the tax advantage, or am I really giving because that's what I'm commanded to do? But then the trade-off is our expenses were also down. And so we actually came into the year still in a very strong financial position because there was that trade-off. But the other thing I kind of wanted to ask you about and point to was many churches, and they're talking about this new dynamic also here in the American church, where people now are seeing online participation in a worship service as a valid substitute for actually going and being at church, and how we're going to be seeing churches settle into a new norm, and actually the megachurch potentially going away, not only because of fear of disease and cross-contamination and communicable the communicable aspect of diseases, but then people just going, hey, I can go to church in my pajamas with a coffee, and that's church. And of course we know that's not correct, that's not biblical. But let me just ask as a quick follow-up question, is that a concern there, that people might become very comfortable and satisfied with just participating in church online and thinking, well, this is church. This is an equally valid substitute or parallel to actually being there.
Yeah, good question. Again, we are thankful for the technology that allows us to connect to people who cannot come to church for whatever reason that may be. But yes, there is a concern. I mean, we have seen, and in talking with a few other pastors, we have seen where people would say to us, I don't feel comfortable coming to the church. And then when we're out in the community, in the city, you see them all of a sudden at a restaurant, or you see them out and about without their protection in the grocery store. And I went to the local Jumbo, several times I've gone to Jumbo, which is basically our Walmart. And you go in there and you have a line. They may have like 15 registers with 30 or 40 people in a line. Nobody's taking your temperature. Nobody is giving you hand gel. You're touching everything. You're bumping into each other. It's mass chaos. And people will go there, but then they feel uncomfortable coming to church. And that's kind of has been that's a tough one for us, because I've said this, it takes more faith to go to Jumbo than it does to come to our church service. And that's kind of how we feel, because we are taking it very seriously in that, we don't get into that whole debate about, we're going to do what we need to do to protect the most amount of people and lovingly, share with him. And so, there's a concern. There's a concern there that people may get comfortable. And, this has really affected like our school, because our school has not been in class, since March.
Yeah.
And so we have, I think, nearly 450 students at the school, and they haven't been in class since March, but they've been doing video. Yeah. But the challenges of teachers trying to connect with the students and interact, it's just not the same. And we're thankful for the technology, but when you have parents that are taking the test for the kids and doing the homework, and you're trying to tell them not to, and it's just very difficult to make that deep impact with the students. And so I think the same thing with the church is, if that's the only option you have, it's great. And it's a blessing to be able to communicate and have interaction online, but it's still not the same as being in person. I mean, we're in person, right?
And I think one of the things that we enjoy, and the Dominicans are still very loving and a very strong knit community, and so they do prefer everything being presential. Yeah. It's getting more comfortable to stay at home and watch from via video. But I do see, and I've seen in some of the discipleship relationships that I have, they do yearn for that face to face, and I think the Dominican culture as a community, it might be a little bit more face-to-face interaction preferring than maybe the American society. And so, because we can be, I think the United States, a lot of times people can be separated into their cells, and that's normal. In the Dominican, it's not as normal. They're getting more comfortable being separated, but they still don't like it. And so we're hoping that that'll work in our advantage when they start seeing, okay, yes, we can come together. They do miss that, I think somebody, and we weren't supposed to, but one of the women that I'm spending time with in a small group, she just hugged my neck and held me for so long. And I just held my breath for her sake, and she held her breath for my sake. But I think she needed that touch. And so I think Dominicans still hopefully
and we see this dynamic on our online groups, with our small groups, our life groups. We've had pretty good attendance in several of our groups. Have actually been better than before. And I think it's because everybody has to be home. That's the other thing I forgot to say.
Curfew.
We're still under curfew here. And it was just until this past week that it has loosened. Up until this past week, it was 5:00 on the weekdays. And for the last about a month, it has been 12 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday. And so it's just now gone to 5:00, and it's just on the weekends, and it's just been extended to 7:00 on the weekdays. And so
So that would be one of my prayer requests. Gary and I haven't spent so
we're
much
jumping
time
ahead
together
here.
ever in the world. It's like, oh my goodness, you're home again. What?
Yeah. So, that helps the online, the small groups, because everybody has to be home. And so, we've seen good attendance
Pros
in
and
that.
cons,
But
yeah.
here's what's interesting about that. Nearly at the end of every meeting, you see people wave into the screen. I mean, there's just longing to be in the room with one another. And so, people stand there and wave and kiss goodbye.
Nobody wants to.
Nobody wants to be the first one to click off. And so, that tells us that tells us that they're yearning for community and being presential, in person. So hopefully, as this opens up later on, we're supposed to get a vaccine. Of course, I know that's another can of worms. I don't know, for some people, but at least in the Dominican perception is the vaccine will allow them to begin to open up. And so we'll see, we just have to be prepared for the long haul here, and just to kind of be faithful, day by day and week by week. I think the vision is like we have these long-term visions, but our line of sight has sort of been reduced to what do we need to do, this next week or two, because we don't know, the restrictions are changing and curfews go up and down and different requirements. And so this is just a season we're in. And the thing that I think as missionaries, what we realized early on is, look, this is a season, God knew about this. This has not taken God by surprise. He called and led us here. It's not even a question for us. Would we go somewhere else? Because this is the work that God has given us to do. And so our people are struggling with this too. And if they realize that we're in the same boat as them and as they are, and we just live life together. And so, many times we can be focused on getting things done for the ministry. I think in this season, there's been a sense of just trying to be there as whatever way you can, whether that's sitting across from somebody distance with a mask on, whether that's through an online discipleship or small group. It's the best that we can do is just to be present, and there's a yearning for more. So I think coming out of this, we should see a surge. I hope so, but we're just trying to be faithful where we're at right now.
Yeah, just to share, sometimes when you feel that way, or when groups of believers feel that way, they think we must be the only ones who are struggling with this. It's funny, when we kind of polled our people, we took a survey of where we were at, where the comfort level was at, as things also here cycle through, expansion, shutdown, depending on what state you live in, what county you live in. The thing that our people miss the most, even though we're back to an aspect of regathering, at least in the worship services, is they miss the fellowship side of what we did as a body. And it wasn't the meals per se, but our fellowship usually took place around food. And so they missed that interconnectivity, that person to person, and the time that we spent. And it's because God has created us as a family. And so when we're not with each other as a family, just as it would be with your normal family, there's a sense of loss. And so as just an aspect of encouragement to you all and to your spiritual family there in the DR, believers, I think, everywhere, but here at this church, they're feeling that sense of loss too, and are looking forward to the day that we can regather normally without restrictions.
Amen. Yeah, often I think of these words of Paul when he writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. And you didn't ask me to come on here to preach, and so don't worry, I won't do that. But when he says we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. And then he says we are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. And then he continues on there. But I think that's our desire, is that people would see God through this and would be drawn closer to him, and that we can be instruments, for him, hopefully like we've always been, but now walking through a new season with our people and our ministry, and just navigating that and just being faithful and letting God provide and show himself through the ministry and the work here is really what we're still trying to do. And so Allison has been able to do some things with her ladies rescue ministry, and you're always up to talk about that.
Absolutely. Here we go. Now, many of you know, and I think Tri-County has actually partnered with us on several parties, jewelry parties, because we have the Mercy Workshop, which provides rescue, and we serve women who have been exploited in the sex trade, and we enjoy that ministry. But with curfew and lockdown and everything, we tried to figure out how we could minister to the women on the streets, even though they wouldn't be out at night when we do our outreach in the evening, and with curfew at 5:00, we would have to figure out where and find new areas, and so we were able to find new areas where the women are out on the streets. And so we were able to give them a letter and a ticket to come to the church on Tuesdays and Fridays and receive a bag of groceries, as well as just sit and talk to them, pray with them. And then from that, once the Mercy Workshop opened again, we actually had women, a couple of women join the Mercy Workshop and start the program, as far as recovery program, counseling, work and job skills, and all of that goes with that. But at the same time, we continued to do outreach and open up every other Friday. We do an outreach luncheon. So we go out on the streets on Thursday night, invite all of the women that we see on the streets to come to lunch on Friday at the church. And so the pastors have taken turns sharing the gospel. We thought at first maybe not allowing men upstairs to the workshop for obvious reasons, but at the same time, it's been a blessing for the women to understand that there are loving brothers, there are loving men who can share the gospel with them, but then can also just show that they are worth more. They were created for a purpose, and so that's what we've been able to start, and so that's been an exciting part of the ministry, just to continue on and see that grow a little bit and see that kind of come together in a more cohesive manner.
There was a lady that came the other day to church. Mm-hmm. She had not been to a church in 19 years, but she was reached through that outreach and got connected with the Women's Rescue Ministry, and then came back to church, and she was weeping after the service. And she expressed to Allison and her team, I hadn't been to church in 19 years. And so, you realize that if we take COVID away, people still need the Lord. I mean, not to sound trite, but I mean, there's a spiritual need and a spiritual darkness that's here. And so, we don't want to make COVID the focus. We still want to make God the focus and reaching people with the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so there have been stories like that, where people have gotten connected through this time. And we have another couple that has been very faithful to our small group Bible study. He accepted the Lord. She needs to be during the pandemic. Both of them need to be baptized and are going to join the church very soon. So we're figuring out how to do that, because our baptistry is outside, and we can't really congregate.
Gary's thinking of just hosing them down as they walk by, and so we don't know how biblical that is.
Yeah, we're looking for the justification of that.
Or dumping a bucket, like an ice bucket challenge kind of situation. We don't know.
Well, speaking as a former firefighter, if you get a 2.5-inch hose instead of the 1 1/4 off the truck, and you open it on full deluge, it could qualify as immersion.
As immersion. Okay, great. So yeah, we're looking at some of those things. What we'll probably do is baptize and allow them to invite their friends and family, videotape that, and then show it to the rest of the church, because we can't gather around our outdoor baptistry like normal. But again, just all these challenges that you have, but the ministry goes forward, the work of God goes forward. And I'm not trying to say that it's not difficult. There are frustrations, but I think God has given us, surrounded us with people in our church that love us and are connected with us and provide that community with us. God's given us a great team. We have a wonderful team of co-laborers that are around us. We can encourage one another. And then, God has given us faithful supporters back home that pray for us and financially invest and do things like this. Say, hey, we'd like to connect with you. And so, I mean, these things are just they're a jolt in the arm. They help us. And so there's just lots of ways that God brings encouragement to us. And thank you again, Pastor Brian and Tri-County. This is not an advertising spot. You didn't ask me to do this, but just we genuinely are thankful for people like you all.
And I think we're going on 20 years that Tri-County has supported us.
Yeah, nearly 20 years. And so hey, and listen to this, because I know that several of your families came down many years ago on Vision Land. Vision Land is 46 acres of land. And this year, even during the pandemic, we've been able to do some advancement. We were able to finish the soccer field. Now, we don't have permission yet to put players on the soccer field, but we have the soccer field finished. We're at a place where we can basically have two long soccer programs going at the same time. So we're excited about that. We have a group villa that we're building that would be able to host our missions teams and be able to host, camps and retreats and be a missionary oasis here in the Dominican. We envision having a swimming pool and just really nice area for people to come and stay. And we haven't finished that, but we were able to get another side of that done and under roof. We're under roof and we need to finish it out. But so there's been progress.
And Tri-County helped start the wall.
Yeah, and Tri-County started the Great Wall of the Dominican Republic is, due a large part to Tri-County's involvement. Yeah. So work still goes on out there and we're continuing to develop and move forward with that. And maybe when it's, a better time for travel and not all the uncertainty, you all can come back and visit and we can put you on something other than a wall.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let me go ahead and ask and try to bring this to some aspect of a close. Although I keep looking at my clock down here in the bottom right-hand corner thinking, it hasn't been that long. I'm like, oh, no, we actually have been doing quite well at filling up our time. But if you're not quite there yet, you don't have to do this. You can obviously share some new things moving, what you're looking at doing moving forward, because I know one of the things that I get regularly asked is, well, Pastor, what's next? And the answer is I don't know. I mean, I do in a perfect world, but until some of these things are lifted from us, and as long as they're not restricting us from doing what God's word says and causing us to sin, we have to submit to our civil authority. So I don't know. In a perfect world, this is what we think we're going to be doing. And I genuinely believe that there are going to be some things moving forward that are just going to be different culturally from now on. And they're here to stay. And that's going to impact what we do as a ministry. And even if there things aren't put on us from the outside in, I think there's just going to be a change in people that are going to force what we kind of do in relationship to ministry. We are potentially not going to see the large event gatherings that we used to, because there might be a level of discomfort, especially reaching out to families in our community where we're at. There still is an aspect of fear, for lack of a better term. But anyway, if you want to speak to just a little bit of things in the potential future, and then bring it down to some prayer requests and praises for us, and then we'll kind of wrap things up after that.
Okay, sure. Well, I think kind of the vision of the future would probably be our prayer requests as well. For the most of it, I mean, we're much like you we kind of see, we understand where we're going. We're not sure how long it's going to take to get there, especially with this season of ministry. But one of the things on the church level is about 2 years ago, we undertook the purchase of a new facility right beside us that was going to expand. And so the Mercy Workshop's upstairs, we have offices downstairs, we have children's classrooms, youth use it. We have, kitchen, basketball court. And so it's just a great ministry property to put with our auditorium. And so we took that step of faith, and we were 1 year into paying on it, and then COVID hits, and so that's been a test. But again, we've been able to make our payments. Also, we've had some special gifts in our church, and this is what's so critical in a culture that sometimes has been conditioned to just receive. Our church has assumed the responsibility to pay on this loan and has also done some special activities like a yard sale and a special offering and videos and things like that to encourage the people. So they are committed to this. But the challenge is that this facility was purchased for $200,000, and really we can sustain the operations based upon the offerings and the giving in the Dominican Republic. But much like a university would raise money to buy to build a building or build a complex, we didn't necessarily factor in a pandemic that was going to cause us to have difficulty in paying off. But here's what's exciting: in this year, we've been able to pay about $70-some thousand off through the combination of churches partnering with us from back home, as well as our people regularly making the $1,000 monthly payment plus extra offerings that have been given. And so we're down to about $83,000 to go. And so, yeah, that's a prayer request, because if we can get that piece off of our shoulders, and then the church has the resources, even in the pandemic, to operate it and all that, then that would just allow us to put more money back into the ministry, instead of just paying on a loan. So it's going to be very strategic as we open up. We are about ready to do some work on the basketball court to refinish that and help with that. So it's got holes and things where we bought it hadn't been cared for a long time. So it's just an outdoor concrete, simple basketball court. But we're already making plans to start a sports league when we can. Sports is a universal language. And here kids need something to do. And so to be able to come to the church and, participate in that would be something we hope we can start sometime in spring. By mid-spring, late spring, we hope we can kind of relaunch the sports program, this year, if the restrictions allow. Allison has a project that she's doing for the women.
As we have been ministering to the women out on the streets, and I just have one of the women that we're serving right now in the ministry. They work with us during the day, but then they go back to their own neighborhoods and homes, obviously in the evening. And some of those environments they're back where their abusers were, their exploiters, their dealers. And so what we're trying to start we started a campaign called the Paloma Project, and we're trying to raise money for a building that will house women just for a short amount of time, more of a residential component to add to Mercy, so women can stay for 6 to 9 months out of their environment that they were in, just right close to us, and work at the workshop, but also receive a little bit more calm area to live, more life skills training as far as how to care for their families. And so just a short-term residential program is called the Paloma Project. We named it after one of the first women that we ever met on outreach. Her name is Paloma. But the interesting thing is Paloma means dove. And so there's all sorts of spiritual meaning. And I think of the dove from Noah's Ark that was looking for a place to set her feet, as what it says in Genesis. And so this lady named Paloma, she actually was HIV positive when we met her. She left the streets, went home to stay with her mom. Her mom was a Christian, and she got saved. And she called me just a few months before she passed away, and she said, I'm home with my mother. I know the Lord now. And so it was a wonderful testimony. She has since passed away, but we know that she is safe in heaven. And so we named the project after her, because we want other women to be able to come home and set their feet strong while they're learning to regain their dignity in the community. And so that's the Paloma Project. We're really excited about that. The women pray for it every day at the workshop. And because they knew Paloma back on the streets back in the day. So that's one of the things that we're just praying about. We're taking classes, talking to other residential ministries in other parts of the world, just to make sure we start it well. And so we're in the beginning stages of that. And I've got a good Dominican team around me helping just, kind of put everything in place. And so we're excited about that. So anyway, Paloma Project.
Yeah, I would.
There's t-shirts available if you want to buy one.
Yeah, there are many things. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got the school. Hopefully we can go back to in-person learning. In the fall, continued development of Vision Land. There are many aspects, and again, we're just trying to take it day by day, week by week, as we can. And God has been faithful, and He will be faithful. We know that. And again, I come back to this is important. This partnership and the fellowship of the gospel, I think, as Paul says, and you all are a part of that. And so, what can you do? I would say just continue to hold the ropes, as the old missionary line goes. For us, to continue to pray for us, continue to feel like you're a part of this work down here. And we would encourage even members, if for some reason you have an activity with your family, or your family prays for missionaries or what have you, it's not that we have a lot of extra time, because as you know, it seems like we're busier than even before with navigating everything. But we have time that we could make time to connect with a Sunday school class, or a small group, or a family that would want to. We want Tri-County to continue to feel like they're deep partners with us, and we feel that on our end. But we want you all to know that the door is open here. This way you don't have to wear a mask. If you come and see us right now, you might have to wear a mask. But thank you for being a part.
Well, I want to thank you guys for being with us tonight. I'm going to let our church family know what we're going to do now is we're going to break. We're going to go to a screen like we have in the past, give you about 2 minutes to take some time to pray for this ministry and this sweet couple. And then I'll come back with some final words, and we'll let you go for tonight. For the Hales, I want you to ask you just to hang on. I'm going to hit the stop recording button, and then I'll visit with you a little bit more before I let you go. But again, I want to thank you again so much for being with us tonight. One of the things I think the pandemic has done is really brought to the forefront an entirely different way of staying connected that has been, again, a very good, healthy, positive in the life of many churches. So again, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. And so, church family, we'll transition now to our prayer time, and then I'll be back with you just very quickly to say a final goodbye.
Well, again, thank you for being with us. We hope this was a blessing to your heart. Join us next week as we double up and hear from 2 of our supported missionaries. But until then, you all have a blessed day.